The silence between us wasn't uncomfortable. It was something else entirely. It was like an invisible force pressing down on me, something I couldn't escape. I could feel it in the air, but we never talked about it. I used to think we were just busy, that the distance was a phase. I convinced myself that life had its own pace, and sometimes it didn't allow for the constant closeness I once imagined. But I knew it wasn't that. Deep down, I knew it was more. The evening had started just like any other. The room was quiet, save for the low hum of the TV. I sat in the corner chair, mindlessly flipping through a book I had already read twice. My wife, Lydia, sat across from me, the soft glow of the lamp casting a gentle light on her face. She wasn't reading, though. She never really was anymore. Her phone was in her hand, but she wasn't even scrolling. It was the first thing I'd noticed, how she hadn't been truly looking at anything for weeks. It was almost like she was staring through the screen. It wasn't a matter of us falling out of love, at least not in the way I had imagined it. It was something quieter, more insidious. A slow erosion of everything we'd built together. Lydia had always been the spark in our relationship. The fire. I was more of the steady presence, the one who kept things balanced, who kept the storm from raging. But now, I was the one left searching for that spark. She'd withdrawn into herself, and I'd stayed silent, thinking it would pass. But tonight, I couldn't ignore it anymore. "Clark," she said suddenly, without looking up, "can we talk?" The words fell like stones into the silence. The air in the room shifted. I felt it like a jolt, but I stayed still. My heart raced, but I tried to hide it. I hadn't heard her use that tone in months. It wasn't urgent, but it wasn't casual either. It felt like the first moment in a long time where things were actually going to be said out loud. "Sure, what's on your mind?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. I put my book down, but the shaking of my hands was impossible to hide. Lydia put the phone down and met my gaze. Her eyes, once full of warmth, were distant, like she was already 1,000 miles away, even though we were sitting mere feet apart. She exhaled slowly, taking a moment before speaking, as if gathering courage for something I couldn't even begin to imagine. "I've been thinking about this a lot lately," she started, her voice soft but strangely detached. "And I think you deserve to know the truth. The real truth." I leaned forward, my pulse quickening. My body tensed, and I tried to read her, to understand where this was going. But her expression didn't give anything away. "Lydia," I said carefully, "what truth? What's going on?" Her lips tightened slightly, as though she had rehearsed this moment in her head over and over again. And now that it was happening, she couldn't quite believe it. "I've been seeing someone else." The words hit me like a slap in the face, but I didn't react at first. I couldn't. My brain didn't register it. I just stared at her, waiting for the punchline, waiting for her to laugh and tell me it was some cruel joke. But no, she wasn't laughing. Her eyes were filled with something I couldn't quite define. I wanted to laugh too, but not in disbelief. I wanted to laugh at how absurd it all was. How could I have missed this? How could I have been so blind? I stood up, too quickly, and then immediately regretted it. I needed space. I needed air. "Who? How long?" "I don't want to go into all the details," she said quietly, avoiding my gaze. "But I've been seeing him for almost 2 months now. I didn't mean for it to happen this way, Clark. It wasn't planned, and it wasn't about you, at least not at first." Her words were heavy, like they weighed 1,000 pounds. I wanted to scream at her, demand to know who he was, but I couldn't bring myself to do it. Instead, I stood there, frozen. The only thing moving was the storm inside me. "You didn't mean for it to happen?" I asked, my voice trembling despite my efforts to stay calm. "Lydia, you've been lying to me. To us. For months. And now you're just telling me this as if it's nothing?" "I didn't want to hurt you, Clark. I thought I could stop it, but the more I tried to ignore it, the harder it became to let go. I couldn't keep pretending." I ran a hand through my hair, trying to grasp for control over something, anything, but everything felt like it was slipping through my fingers. "And what now, Lydia? What am I supposed to do with this? What do you want me to do?" She looked at me then, really looked at me. I saw the pain in her eyes, the guilt that had eaten at her for weeks. She wasn't asking for forgiveness. She was already past that. She was asking for something else. For understanding. "I don't know, Clark," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't even know if I can forgive myself." I didn't know how to respond. Part of me wanted to walk away, to leave and never look back. But the other part of me, The part that still cared about her despite everything. Just stood there, paralyzed. We can't go back to the way things were, can we? I asked, the truth settling in like a weight I couldn't lift. No, she answered, her voice so quiet, I barely heard it. I don't think we can. And just like that, the foundation of everything I had known, everything I had believed in, was gone. All that was left was silence, the kind that's far louder than any words could ever be. The next few hours were a blur. I don't even remember what we talked about after that. I just know the tension in the room never lifted. It felt like I was suffocating, but I couldn't bring myself to leave. Every part of me wanted to run, to escape this reality she had just thrown at me, but I didn't. I stayed. I had to stay. Lydia didn't say much more after that, either. We both sat there in silence, as if the air between us had thickened to the point where even breathing felt like an effort. Every word that had come out of her mouth echoed in my mind. I've been seeing someone else. Those words, simple and yet so brutal, kept repeating over and over, making it impossible to focus on anything else. The absurdity of it all hit me in waves. I thought we were fine. I thought we were happy. Sure, we'd had our rough patches, who doesn't? But we made it through. Or at least, I thought we did. So how did we get here? How had everything slipped away so easily? I could feel my chest tightening as the seconds ticked by. I could feel the anger building inside me, but not just at Lydia. Not just at the betrayal. I was angry at myself. I had missed every sign, every hint. Every time she pulled away, I thought she was just tired, or stressed, or dealing with work. I made excuses for her, for us. I convinced myself it was nothing, that everything would go back to normal. But it never did. And now, it never would. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Lydia broke the silence. Clark, I never wanted to hurt you. The words were almost too quiet to hear, and they weren't an apology. At least, not the kind of apology I was hoping for. It wasn't the kind of apology I was demanding in my head. This wasn't her begging for my forgiveness. It wasn't her realizing the weight of what she had done. No, this was something else. Something that made my blood run cold. I didn't mean for this to happen. I didn't plan any of it. It just, she trailed off, not knowing how to finish the sentence. It just happened. I repeated her words, the bitterness creeping into my voice. I couldn't help it. Is that supposed to make me feel better, Lydia? That you didn't mean for this to happen? She shook her head quickly. No, Clark. I didn't mean for any of it, but I didn't know how to stop it once it started. You haven't really been here, not really. And he made me feel seen again. For the first time in a long time, I felt noticed. The words stung more than I expected. They weren't about the affair itself. No, they were about the realization that she felt so alone, so invisible in our marriage that she had to turn to someone else for validation. The thought hit me like a wave. It wasn't the betrayal I couldn't handle. It was the fact that my own wife had felt so lost that she had to seek comfort somewhere else. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. I needed clarity. I needed answers. But instead of asking questions, all I could do was stare at her. I tried to process everything, to make sense of what was happening, but the more I tried, the more I realized that the answers weren't something I was going to find easily. Maybe I didn't even want the answers anymore. What does this mean for us, Lydia? The words felt foreign coming out of my mouth. It was the first time in a long while that I had allowed myself to say them. What does this mean for us? The question hung in the air like a cloud, too heavy to move. I don't know, she replied softly. I wish I had an answer for you. I felt my throat constrict. I wanted to scream, to demand that she make a decision, to choose between him and me, but I knew it wasn't that simple. No, this wasn't a decision about who she loved more. This was about something deeper, something broken. Then what are we supposed to do now? I asked, my voice almost a whisper. What happens next? Lydia's eyes filled with tears, and for a moment, she looked like the woman I had married, the woman who had once held my hand, who had laughed with me through everything. But then, just as quickly, it was gone. The mask fell again, and I was left staring at someone who I didn't know, someone who had hidden so much from me for so long. I don't have the answers, Clark, she said, the sadness in her voice unmistakable. I wish I did, but I can't change what's happened. We both sat in silence again, the weight of her words sinking in. We couldn't go back. We couldn't fix this. The trust was gone, shattered into a million pieces. And no matter how hard we tried, we couldn't put it back together. But what hurt more than the betrayal was the realization that, Despite everything, I didn't want to give up on her. I didn't want to let go of the woman I thought I knew. I didn't want to admit that our marriage, our love, had ended like this. But maybe it had. Maybe this was the end of everything we had once been. I wasn't sure if I was ready to face that, but I knew one thing for sure. I had to make a choice. Whether I stayed or whether I walked away, it was up to me now. The night stretched on, but the hours felt like days. I couldn't sleep, couldn't think straight. The weight of what Lydia had said lingered in my mind, like a constant pressure on my chest. I couldn't even look at her without feeling the sting of betrayal. But at the same time, a small part of me still felt for her, maybe more than I should. It was a confusing mess of emotions that I couldn't unravel, not yet. I found myself sitting at the kitchen table, staring out the window, my thoughts racing. The sun had already set, and the only light left in the house was from the faint glow of the streetlights outside. The world felt so distant, as though I were watching it from some far-off place. Everything felt muffled, unreal. Lydia was still in the living room, her phone in her hands again, but I didn't think she was looking at it. She seemed distant, lost in her own thoughts, and I couldn't bring myself to approach her. Part of me wanted to ask more questions, demand the truth, demand closure, but the other part of me feared what I might hear. What if I found out even worse things? What if the man she had been seeing was someone I knew, someone I had trusted? The thought alone made my stomach churn. I had been pacing around the kitchen, trying to gather the strength to confront her again, but when I turned around, I found her standing behind me. "Clark," she whispered. Her voice was barely audible, like she was afraid to speak too loudly, afraid of breaking the fragile silence we'd been living in all night. "I don't know how to fix this. I don't even know if I can." I didn't turn to face her. I couldn't. The anger and hurt were too fresh. The hurt was too raw. "I know, Lydia. I know you don't know how to fix it." I tried to keep my voice steady, but it cracked a little. "But that doesn't change what's been done. It doesn't change what you've done." She didn't say anything. Instead, she stepped closer, her footfalls almost silent against the hardwood floor. I could feel her presence behind me, like a shadow that refused to leave. I wanted to tell her to go away, to give me some space, but I couldn't find the words. I was trapped between my emotions, between what I felt for her and what I knew was the right thing to do. "Clark, I never wanted to hurt you. I swear I didn't," she said, her voice shaking now, barely holding together. I turned slowly to face her then, my eyes meeting hers. I could see the guilt in them, but there was something else too, something that made me question everything. Was it remorse? Was it fear? Or was it something deeper, something that had been building between us long before she met him? The distance between us hadn't just appeared out of nowhere, after all. It had been there for months, creeping in, unnoticed. "Lydia, it's not just about what you did. It's about everything that led up to it." I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. "I've been blind. I thought we were fine. I thought I was doing enough, being enough. But I wasn't. And now you've shattered everything we built." Her lips trembled, and for a second, I thought she was going to break down. But she didn't. She just stood there, holding my gaze as if she were waiting for something. Maybe she was waiting for me to forgive her. Maybe she was waiting for me to tell her that everything would be okay. But I couldn't give her that. Not yet. "I know you've been trying, Lydia," I said, my voice softening a little. "But I don't think that's enough anymore." There was a moment of silence between us, a heavy pause where neither of us knew what to say next. I wasn't sure if I was ready to walk away, but I knew something had to change. I had to make a decision. We had to make a decision. But I didn't want to make it yet. I couldn't. The weight of everything was too much. "I don't know what to do anymore," Lydia said finally, breaking the silence. She wiped away a tear, but it didn't make her look any more vulnerable. It made her look lost. And maybe, in that moment, I realized just how lost we both were. "You don't know what to do? You're the one who made this choice, Lydia." "I didn't do this," I said, the anger creeping back into my voice. "I'm not the one who stepped outside of our marriage." She flinched at my words, but I didn't feel bad for saying them. They needed to be said. She needed to hear the truth, the full truth, even if it hurt. "I know," she whispered, "and I regret it. I do. I've been trying to fix it, but it's been too late for so long. And now I don't even know if I can fix us." The truth hit me like a slap in the face. She didn't just regret what she had done. She regretted how long it had taken for her to realize how much was broken between us. She wasn't just sorry for the affair. She was sorry for everything that had come before it. The walls we built between us, the things we hadn't said. And now, as the silence stretched on, I realized that I wasn't sure I could fix this either. I need time, I said quietly. I need to think about everything, Lydia. About what I want. About what we can still have, if anything. She nodded, her expression unreadable. I understand. I wasn't sure if I did understand. I wasn't sure if I could ever understand. But I knew one thing for certain. Nothing would ever be the same again. I woke up the next morning to an uncomfortable stillness in the house. The kind of silence that makes your skin crawl. The kind that settles deep in your bones. Lydia was already up, of course. I couldn't remember the last time I had seen her sleep past sunrise, but today, it felt like she was avoiding me. And I, for my part, didn't want to be in the same room with her anyway. I walked to the kitchen, my thoughts a jumbled mess. My mind was a battlefield, torn between what I had always known and the crushing reality of betrayal that lay in front of me. I needed clarity, but I knew it wouldn't come easily. The love I had for Lydia was still there, but so was the hurt, and the anger, and the frustration. I had spent so many years believing that we had something solid, something unbreakable, and now it was all in question. The coffee maker hummed as it brewed, filling the kitchen with the comforting smell of caffeine, but it didn't ease the heaviness in my chest. It didn't change the fact that my wife had been with someone else. It didn't take away the sting of her words the night before. I've been seeing someone else. Those words repeated themselves in my mind like a broken record, and no matter how hard I tried to push them out, they remained. I stood there, leaning against the counter, staring at the empty cup in my hand. My brain was working in overdrive, trying to process everything, but it was like trying to piece together a puzzle where half the pieces were missing. What did this mean for us? Could I forgive her? Could I ever see her the same way again? I didn't know, but I knew I couldn't make a decision yet. Not today. I could hear her footsteps coming down the hallway, slow and hesitant. I didn't need to turn around and know it was Lydia. Her presence was like a weight, pressing down on me, and I couldn't decide if I wanted her to leave or if I wanted to confront her and get everything out in the open. But when she stepped into the kitchen, the look in her eyes told me everything I needed to know. "Clark," she said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. "We need to talk." I turned slowly, not wanting to meet her gaze, but I had to. I couldn't avoid it forever. "About what, Lydia? We already talked last night." "I know, but I need you to understand something," she said, her hands trembling slightly as she played with the edge of her sleeve. "I'm not trying to make excuses, and I'm not asking for forgiveness. But I need to explain why it happened. Why I didn't say anything sooner." I crossed my arms, my eyes narrowing. "You're telling me this now? After everything that's happened, now you want to explain?" She flinched at my tone, and for a moment, I thought she might cry. But she didn't. She stood there, trying to gather her thoughts, her eyes flickering with uncertainty. "I don't know when it started, Clark," she said, her voice cracking slightly. "I didn't even realize what I was doing until it was already too late. But I've been so lonely for so long. You've been so distant, so focused on everything but us. And I didn't know how to fix it. I tried, but you never noticed. I thought if I could just get your attention, things would go back to normal. But they didn't, and I ended up hurting you." Her words felt like a punch in the stomach, but as she spoke, something inside me began to shift. It wasn't about the affair anymore. It wasn't even about the betrayal. It was about the fact that she was admitting what had gone wrong long before any of this happened. She wasn't just confessing to what she had done. She was confessing to how she had felt for months, years even. I took a deep breath, trying to process it all. "Lydia, you're telling me you cheated because you felt lonely?" She nodded, her eyes welling with tears. "I don't know how else to explain it, Clark. You were always there, but you weren't really there. I needed someone who saw me, who made me feel like I mattered. And for a little while, he did. But I hate myself for it. I hate that I hurt you. I hate that I let it go on for so long." The words hung in the air between us, heavy and suffocating. I didn't know what to say. What could I say? There was nothing that could take away the hurt, nothing that could erase what had happened. But there was one thing that stood out to me, one thing that stuck with me, no matter how hard I tried to ignore it. She didn't want to hurt me. It didn't make it better, not by a long shot. But it made me realize something important. This wasn't just about her cheating. It wasn't just about her breaking my trust. It was about how much we had both neglected each other, how much we had taken each other for granted. I had been blind, just as she had been. I'm not saying this makes it okay, Lydia, I said, my voice softer now. But I understand why you did it. I understand in a way, but that doesn't change what happened. And it doesn't change how much I'm hurting right now. I know, Clark, she whispered. I know. I don't know how to fix this. I don't know if we can fix this. We stood there in silence, neither of us knowing what to say next. The truth was, I didn't know if I could forgive her. I didn't know if I could ever look at her the same way again. But at the same time, I didn't want to lose her. Not completely. I realized in that moment that I didn't need an immediate answer. I didn't need her to fix everything in an instant. What I needed was time. Time to heal. Time to think. Time to figure out if we could salvage what was left of us. Let's just take it one step at a time, I said finally, my voice barely a whisper. We'll figure it out. But not right now. Right now, I need space. Lydia nodded, wiping away a tear as she took a step back. Okay, I understand. I hope we can find a way to move forward. And just like that, she left. She walked away, leaving me standing there, my heart in pieces, unsure of where to go from here. The next few days felt like a fog I couldn't escape. I moved through them like I was on autopilot, just going through the motions. Wake up, eat, go to work, come home. The house felt different somehow. The walls seemed colder, like they were pressing in on me from all sides. It wasn't just the silence between Lydia and me. Although that was certainly unbearable, it was something deeper, something unspoken that had been festering for months, maybe years. I couldn't shake the image of Lydia standing there, her voice cracking as she tried to explain herself. I needed someone who saw me. Her words echoed in my mind, replaying over and over, each time sharper than the last. I wanted to hate her. I wanted to scream, to demand more answers, to make her understand the damage she had caused. But there was something else there too, something that kept me from completely walking away. It was the look in her eyes, the regret, the guilt. But more than that, it was the fear of what she had done, and fear of losing me. I wasn't sure if I could ever forgive her, but I wasn't sure I could walk away either. What did that make me? Was I a fool? Or was I just holding on to something that was already broken beyond repair? I spent the next few days trying to find some clarity, but it wasn't coming. I'd find myself staring at the clock at work, counting the minutes until I could leave. The hours in the office passed by slowly, but the moments at home stretched on forever. I would come home, sit in the living room, and try to pretend things were normal. But they weren't. They couldn't be. One evening, after another long day at work, I came home to find Lydia sitting on the couch, her hands folded in her lap. She looked so small, so vulnerable. Her usual confidence was gone, replaced by a quiet desperation that I hadn't seen in her before. I stood in the doorway for a moment, just watching her. She didn't hear me at first, lost in her thoughts, but then she looked up, as though she sensed my presence. Clark, she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. We need to talk again. I could feel the weight of her words before she even said them. I didn't want to go through this again. I didn't want to hear any more apologies, any more explanations. But a part of me knew that I couldn't just shut her out. Not completely. I had to face this, whether I was ready or not. I walked into the room and sat down across from her, trying to steady myself. What is it this time, Lydia? Her eyes filled with tears again, and I could see how much this was tearing her apart. She had made a mess of everything, and now she was trying to pick up the pieces. But was it too late? Could we fix this? I've been thinking a lot, she began, her voice trembling. About what you said, about how you felt. And I get it now. I do. I can see that I've hurt you, and I hate myself for it. I don't know how to make up for what I've done, Clark. I don't know if I can. I didn't say anything at first. I couldn't. I was so tired of hearing her words without seeing real change. But I knew that if I wanted any kind of closure, any kind of peace, I needed to listen. You didn't just cheat on me, Lydia, I said, my voice thick with emotion. You broke my trust. And that's not something that can be fixed with words. It's not something I can just forgive overnight. And I don't even know if I ever can. She nodded, as though she already knew what I was going to say. I know. And I'm not asking you to forgive me, not right now. But I need you to know that I regret it. I regret everything. I never meant to hurt you. Then why didn't you tell me sooner? I asked, the question that had been on my mind since the day she confessed. Why didn't you come to me before all of this happened? Why did you wait until it was too late? Her face tightened as though the question had pierced her like a blade. I was scared, Clark. Scared of what you'd think of me. Scared that you wouldn't understand. Scared that I'd lose you. And the more I hid it, the worse it got. It wasn't just the affair. It was everything else she had kept from me. The emotional distance, the things left unsaid, the quiet resentment that had been building between us. I hadn't noticed it at the time, but now, in the aftermath, it all seemed so obvious. Lydia, I don't know if we can ever go back to what we were, I said, my voice barely a whisper. I don't know if I can look at you the same way again. I don't expect you to, she replied, her voice thick with emotion. But I'm asking you to let me try. Let me show you that I'm sorry. Let me show you that I'm not the person I was when all of this started. I didn't respond immediately. I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to tell her to leave, to walk away, to end this once and for all. But another part of me, the part that still cared for her, the part that still believed in us, didn't want to give up yet. Maybe it was foolish. Maybe I was setting myself up for more hurt. But I wasn't ready to make that decision. Not yet. We can't just go back to pretending everything is fine, I said finally. But maybe we can figure this out. One step at a time. Lydia's eyes filled with tears again, but this time, they weren't just tears of guilt. They were tears of relief, of hope. Thank you, she whispered, her voice breaking. Thank you for even considering it. I didn't know what the future held for us, but in that moment, I realized that neither of us was ready to let go. Not yet. The days following that conversation were the hardest I had ever experienced. We still lived in the same house, shared the same space, but it felt like we were worlds apart. Every time I looked at Lydia, I couldn't help but see everything that had happened. The betrayal wasn't just a memory now. It was a living, breathing thing that hovered between us every second. I didn't know if I could ever look at her without seeing the affair, without wondering what else she might be hiding. And yet, we kept moving forward, sort of. We ate dinner together, but there was no conversation, no connection. We sat in silence for hours, the noise of our own breathing the loudest thing in the room. She would try to talk, try to reach out to me, but every time she did, it felt like she was pushing me further away. Maybe it was my fault. Maybe I wasn't ready to forgive her, to let go of the anger and hurt. Or maybe, deep down, I knew that something had broken between us, something that couldn't be repaired. One evening, I found myself sitting in the living room, trying to read, trying to lose myself in a book, but the words on the pages blurred together. It felt like everything in my life was out of focus. My thoughts, my emotions, my connection to Lydia, all of it seemed like it was slipping through my fingers, like sand. And the worst part was that I didn't know if I was the one letting it go or if it was already gone. I couldn't stand the silence anymore. It was suffocating. I needed to say something, anything, to break the tension. But when I looked over at Lydia, sitting there with her phone in her hands, I realized I didn't know what to say. How do you confront the person who destroyed your trust when you can't even find the words? Lydia, I said finally, my voice rough. She looked up, startled, as if she hadn't expected me to speak. She had been avoiding eye contact with me for days, like she was afraid to look me in the eye. We need to talk again. I could see her body tense at my words, her shoulders straightening. About what? She asked, her voice tight, guarded. I wanted to scream, to demand answers, but I knew that wasn't going to fix anything. It wasn't going to bring back the trust, the love, the connection we used to have. I don't know what I'm doing anymore, Lydia. I don't know what we're doing. She set her phone down and looked at me, her eyes filled with something that resembled fear. Fear of what, though? Of losing me? Or of realizing that we were already lost? I don't know either, she said, her voice trembling. I don't know how to fix this. I don't know if we can. But I want to try, Clark. I do. I want to make it right. The words should have been comforting. They should have been reassuring. But they didn't feel that way. Not anymore. I stood up, pacing around the room, unable to keep still. You don't get it, Lydia. It's not just about fixing it. It's about everything we've lost. And the worst part? I don't even know if we can get it back. I don't know if I can get it back. She got up slowly, as if afraid of the distance between us. Clark, I'm so sorry. You have no idea how much I regret everything. I never wanted to hurt you. Never. I didn't know what to do anymore. I stopped pacing and turned to face her. And what about him, Lydia? What about the guy you've been seeing? What do you want me to do with that? She flinched at the mention of his name, her face paling. I don't want you to do anything with that. I don't want him. I want you, Clark. I want us. But I know that's not enough. I know I can't just say sorry and expect everything to go back to normal. For a moment, I couldn't say anything. The weight of her words pressed down on me, and for the first time in days, I felt the anger and frustration rise up inside me. I felt like I was drowning, like I couldn't breathe. I don't even know who you are anymore, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. I don't recognize the person standing in front of me. You've changed, Lydia, and I don't know if I can ever trust you again. Her eyes filled with tears, and she took a tentative step toward me. I know I've hurt you, Clark, and I'm sorry. I am. But I'm not asking you to forgive me right now. I'm asking you to let me try. Let me show you that I can change. Let me show you that I'm still the woman you married. I shook my head, stepping back. You don't get it, Lydia. You've already changed. And maybe I have too. Maybe we're not the same people we were before all of this happened. The words hung in the air like an unspoken truth, and I realized how deep the rift between us had become. It wasn't just about the affair anymore. It wasn't just about what she had done. It was about how far we had drifted apart, how we had both let things fester until they exploded into something neither of us could control. I don't know if I can do this anymore, I said, my voice shaky. I don't know if I can keep trying when I'm not sure who I'm trying for anymore. Lydia looked at me, her face a mixture of guilt and despair. Clark, please, don't give up on us. I know it's hard. I know I've messed up, but I swear to you, I'm trying. I'm trying so hard to fix it. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know if I could keep doing this. A part of me still wanted to believe that we could make it work, that we could repair the damage, but another part of me knew that the trust between us had been shattered beyond repair. I need time, Lydia, I said finally. I need time to think. I need to figure out what I want. What we both want. She nodded silently, and for the first time in days, I saw a glimmer of understanding in her eyes. Maybe it was because she knew, deep down, that there was no quick fix to this. That we were both standing at the edge of something we couldn't control. Take all the time you need, Clark, she whispered. I'll wait. I didn't know if I could ever come back to her. I didn't know if I could ever forgive her. But as I stood there, staring at her, I realized one thing for sure. Our future was no longer certain. It was a blank page, waiting for us to write the next chapter, if there was even a next chapter at all. The next few days passed in a haze. I wasn't sure if I was waiting for something. Waiting for Lydia to show me more than just regret. Waiting for myself to come to some conclusion, or just waiting for the silence to swallow me whole. I'd wake up every morning with a tight knot in my chest, wondering if today would be the day I would make a decision. But every time I tried to picture a future with her, I couldn't see anything. It was all a blur, a series of fractured images that never quite came together. Lydia, for her part, tried. She really did. She didn't hide from me anymore, didn't bury herself in her phone, or spend hours locked away in the guest room. She would come into the living room, sit next to me, and make small talk, as if trying to rebuild a bridge that had already collapsed. She would cook dinner, and when I'd come home, there would be an awkward silence that hung over the table as we ate. She'd ask how my day went, but I could see the hesitation in her eyes, like she was waiting for me to say something, anything, to break the tension. But I couldn't. I couldn't find the words to bridge the chasm between us. One evening, as the sky outside turned a deep shade of purple, I sat on the couch, flipping through a random magazine, my mind elsewhere. Lydia walked in quietly, her footsteps barely audible. I could feel her presence before I even looked up. She hesitated, as if waiting for permission to speak. Clark, can we talk? Her voice was soft but strained, and I could hear the uncertainty in her tone. I put the magazine down slowly, already knowing where this conversation was heading. It felt like déjà vu, like we'd been here before, over and over again, and still nothing was changing. What is it, Lydia? I asked, my voice tired, the words slipping out with more frustration than I intended. I know we've been stuck in this place, and I don't want to keep pretending like everything is fine, she said, sitting down next to me. There was a tremor in her voice, but she was still trying to hold it together. I've been thinking about what you said, about how much things have changed. And I get it. I do. But I can't keep feeling like I'm losing you, Clark. I can't keep feeling like I'm just waiting for you to give up on me. I turned to face her, but I couldn't bring myself to look her in the eyes. Lydia, I don't know what you want me to say. I don't know how to fix this. I'm not sure if it can be fixed. Her eyes searched my face, desperate for something, anything, to hold on to. I'm not asking for you to fix everything right now. I know it's going to take time, but I need you to tell me if there's still a chance. If there's still something left worth fighting for. It was like a slap to the face. I hadn't realized until that moment how badly I had been avoiding the truth. That I had been avoiding the hardest decision of my life. I had been so caught up in the anger, the hurt, that I hadn't taken the time to really think about what I wanted. What we wanted. Do you want this, Clark? Lydia asked, her voice shaking now. Do you want us? Or is it over? I froze. I didn't have an answer. I wanted to say yes. I wanted to tell her that I still cared, that we could figure it out. But I wasn't sure if I could, and that scared me more than I wanted to admit. The truth was, I still loved her. In some ways, I still wanted to fight for us. But in other ways, the pieces of our relationship felt so far apart, like they couldn't be put back together. There was too much damage. Too many lies. Too many moments where we'd ignored the cracks until they shattered. I don't know, Lydia, I finally whispered, the words escaping before I could stop them. I don't know if I can forgive you. I don't know if I can look at you the same way again. Her face fell, but she didn't cry. She didn't beg. Instead, she nodded, as if she had expected it. I understand. I don't expect you to forgive me right away. I don't expect anything. I just needed to know if you were still willing to try, if you were still here, or if you've already checked out. I leaned back against the couch, my eyes fixed on the ceiling, trying to steady my thoughts. I needed time. I needed space to figure out what I truly wanted. I wasn't sure if I was ready to move on, but I also wasn't sure if I could ever go back to the way things were. I'm still here, I said finally, my voice barely a whisper. But that doesn't mean everything's going to be okay. It doesn't mean I'm ready to forgive you, or that I'm ready to let go. I'm still trying to figure out what to do with all of this. She didn't say anything after that. She just nodded, as if she understood that the road ahead was uncertain. And maybe, for the first time in a long while, we were both in the same place, uncertain, afraid, but still trying. As she stood up and left the room, I sat there, paralyzed by the weight of what we had just said. I didn't have any answers. I didn't have any solutions. But maybe that was okay for now. Maybe it was enough to just acknowledge that we were still here, still fighting, even if we didn't know where it would lead. Days turned into weeks, and the weight between us didn't seem to lighten. The silence still lingered, but there was something different about it now. It wasn't just an absence of noise. It was the space where we were both trying to find the right words, the right actions. Lydia and I didn't pretend everything was perfect. We couldn't. But there were moments. Small, quiet moments that felt like a small spark, a flicker of hope that maybe, just maybe, we could rebuild. I remember one night, after we had spent hours in separate corners of the house, trying to navigate the new dynamics of our broken relationship, Lydia made dinner. Simple spaghetti, nothing fancy, but she made it with an effort that spoke volumes. When I walked into the kitchen, she was standing there, stirring the sauce, her back to me. I hesitated for a moment before stepping forward. Smells good, I said, my voice rough from the silence that had stretched between us for days. She smiled without turning around. I'm trying to do something normal, something we can still do together. I didn't know what to say. How could I speak when my heart was still so conflicted? When every part of me was questioning whether we could get back what we had lost. But then she turned, and her eyes, those eyes that had once been full of fire, looked at me with a tenderness that struck me to my core. I'm sorry, Clark. I know saying it over and over doesn't change anything, but I am. I'm sorry for everything. I walked closer, unsure of what to do next. The anger, the hurt, it was still there, but there was something else too. Something that had always been there beneath the surface. Something that made me hesitate before walking away completely. You don't have to apologize anymore, I said quietly. We've both made mistakes, Lydia, but I'm not ready to give up yet. I'm not ready to walk away. But I need time, and I need you to understand that. She nodded, her eyes filling with relief. I understand. And I'll be here, Clark. I'll wait for you to be ready. I'll wait as long as it takes. That night, we didn't fix everything. We didn't solve all the problems that had built up between us. But we sat down together at that table, and for the first time in weeks, we ate a meal. It wasn't perfect, and we didn't pretend it was. But it was a step. It was progress, however small. The days that followed weren't easy, but something in me shifted. I started to look at Lydia differently, not just as the woman who had betrayed my trust, but as the woman who was still trying, still fighting for us. It wasn't about erasing what had happened. It was about moving forward. Slowly, cautiously, but moving forward nonetheless. Weeks passed, and we found ourselves talking more. Not just about the affair, not just about the things that had gone wrong, but about the small things, the things that had once brought us together in the first place. We talked about memories, about dreams, about what we wanted for the future. And somewhere along the way, I began to see Lydia in a new light. She was flawed, yes. I was too. But she was still the woman I had married. She was still the woman I loved. And little by little, as we built our trust again, piece by piece, we began to heal. It wasn't fast, it wasn't easy, but it was real. One evening, as we were sitting on the porch, watching the sunset together, something we hadn't done in so long, Lydia turned to me, her eyes full of hope. "Clark," she said softly, "do you think we can make it through this? Do you think we can come out the other side stronger?" I didn't answer right away. I thought about everything we had been through, the pain, the heartache, the uncertainty. But I also thought about the moments we had shared since then. The quiet dinners, the laughter, the times we had supported each other, even when we didn't know how. The truth was, I didn't have a perfect answer, but I had something better. "I don't know what the future holds, Lydia," I said finally, my voice steady. "But I know I'm willing to try. I'm willing to fight for us. I believe we can rebuild. We've come this far, and that's enough for me." Her eyes lit up, and for the first time in a long while, I saw the spark in them again. The spark that had drawn me to her all those years ago. And in that moment, I realized that we weren't perfect. We never would be. But maybe, just maybe, that's what made us real. And real was enough. The road ahead was still uncertain, but I was no longer afraid of it. Together, we would take it one step at a time. Because sometimes, the hardest battles lead to the most beautiful victories.